Hello, my name is Evelyn Wilson. I'm a senior training consultant with National Training at Boys Town. So I wanted to talk to you today about the fact that we're all living together, closer than we sometimes want to be. But given the situation that we're dealing with today, we don't really have a lot of options. And I'm speaking primarily today to parents who might be working from home, but also taking care of their kids at the same time, trying to be teachers. So as a result, there's definitely always a silver lining to pretty much anything that happens in life. The silver lining is that we get to spend time with each other. The downside is that we're spending a lot of time with each other. So as a result, you might see some things that your kids are doing. You're thinking, oh my gosh, that is so cute. Oh, I love my kids. They're so wonderful. On the other hand, there might be times when you're like, whose children are these? Are these really my kids? I had a friend, we were communicating online the other day and checking in on each other. And we were asking, how are you doing? Is everybody safe? Is everybody healthy? And so my one friend responded, get me out of here. So I know some parents are experiencing those types of thoughts also. So today we're going to talk about ways that you can handle the things that are going on within your household, whether they be the positive things that you want to keep seeing, or the times when you just want to leave and maybe have some time all by yourself, but you can't, okay? So today we're going to talk to you about consequences. Consequences can be your friend. Consequences can help you determine, how do I get my child to keep doing these wonderful things that I'm seeing? Consequences can also be used to diminish some of those behaviors that you don't want to keep seeing. So first, let's dispel a myth. Oftentimes when people hear the word consequences, they think that it's negative. Consequences can be positive or negative. So when we're talking about consequences today, we're basically talking about any behavior or action that your child demonstrates or engages in. The consequence is the part that follows that behavior. And again, it can be something good, or it can be something that you do or say that hopefully will diminish the chances of your child doing it again. So it's whatever follows the behavior. If you want to see that behavior happen again, then you're going to follow it with a positive consequence. If you don't want to continue to see those behaviors, or you want your kids to stop doing what they're doing, then you're going to deliver what we call a negative consequence, okay? So that's the basic definition that we'll be working from today. Positive consequences increase the likelihood that you'll see the behavior again. Negative consequences, ideally, will decrease the tendencies of your children to engage in those behaviors. So let's talk for a moment about the different types of positive consequences that you have at your disposal. Because a lot of times people think when we say, your child should earn a positive consequence, they think we're talking about spending money. It doesn't necessarily mean that you spend money. And given the situation that we're in right now, you really do need to stay home. So hopefully it's saving you some money. So when we're talking about positive consequences, especially today, we're going to talk about those things that you have at your disposal, oftentimes things that don't cost money. So let's start with privileges. There are probably a lot of privileges that your kids have access to in your home. The one that I'm sure everybody is getting the most use of right now are the devices that kids have access to. The iPhone, the iPad, their telephones, television, video games, and things like that. Parents, those are privileges. Those are not rights, okay? So you can allow your child to maybe access more time on the iPad or watching TV or playing games. There are all types of things in your household that your kids have access to that we're going to consider to be privileges. And those are some examples of privileges. But also, one of the things that you always have at your disposal doesn't cost you any money. It's free, is your attention. And this is a wonderful opportunity to give our kids a lot of positive attention. for so many reasons that I'm not going to go into right now because that would be another subject, but they need reassurance right now that things are going to be okay, that you're going to take care of them. So your attention might include things like just saying, good job, well done, I'm so proud of you, oh my gosh, look at my big boy, my big girl, or a hug, high five, things that we might do just in playing sometimes. Those are always at your disposal. They don't cost any money, and your kids love to receive your attention. Regardless of the age, we all like attention. So it will work with your little ones as well as your teens. You're just going to have to deliver that attention a little differently depending upon your kid's age. The other thing that we have a lot of opportunities to use right now is time. Just spending time with your kids. I mean, we can't go any place. If we do, we can only go so far, and we have to kind of make sure that we're, equipped appropriately to be outside. We're exercising social distance and things like that. But spending individual time with your kids, making special time with them is definitely a positive consequence, especially if you have more than one child. In your household, you have 2, 3 kids, and I know you're thinking, but I just want time by myself. But again, if we're trying to help everybody who's living under this one roof, go ahead and make some special time for your individual kids. It doesn't have to be every day. It can be once a week, where you have that special time together. Or for your little ones, it might need to be once a day. The little and toddlers, 2, 3, 4, 5-year-olds, they might need a couple of times a day where they get your undivided attention. But time is definitely considered to be a positive consequence. Then we have those things that kids don't necessarily like to do, like their daily chores, doing the dishes, sorting the laundry, making their bed, things like that. Well, we can switch that around and make it a positive consequence by giving them permission not to have to do it today. So they might get out of having to take the trash out because they did something really well. Okay, so those are some examples of things that you have at your disposal that we would consider consequences, positive consequences. So we also have to look at the other side. When kids misbehave or do something that you don't want them to keep doing or that makes you want to just pull your hair out, then you want to deliver what we call a negative consequence. So that could be something as simple as losing access to those privileges. So the iPad goes into timeout for a while, or they lose the privilege of playing the video game for a little while. So just telling kids that they've lost the privilege that they enjoy using. Okay, chores can also be used as a negative consequence. Now, obviously, if your kids range in ages from toddlers to teenagers, we can only expect a toddler to do so many things. So chores probably will not work for your younger kids, but for your kids who are maybe 6, 7, 8 and above, chores could definitely be used as a negative consequence. So for example, you may have them do an extra chore that they don't normally do. So maybe they don't have to do dishes on, what is today, Friday? Friday is the day that they usually don't have to wash dishes. But because of something that they did or said, you may choose to have them do the dishes today. Timeout is definitely a negative consequence, and most people use it for younger children, usually maybe ages 3, about 3 to 6 or 7. Timeout can be an effective negative consequence if you use it appropriately. Okay, so let's talk real quickly. I'm not going to spend a lot of time here, but let's talk real quickly about some key characteristics of timeout. Typically, if you're going to use timeout, it's 1 minute per year of age. So if you're using timeout with a 3-year-old, it's going to be about 3 minutes. If it's a 5-year-old, it should be 5 minutes, okay? The thing about timeout also is that a lot of people will allow kids to engage in a lot of behavior and consider it to be timeout. If you want your timeouts to be effective, It starts when your child is sitting quietly doing whatever you want them to do. It's sitting on the step or sitting on in a certain spot or whatever. They're not screaming, they're not yelling, they're not throwing things, they're not calling your name, they're not following you around. They're sitting in that assigned location quietly for 2, 3, 4 minutes or whatever it is that you have determined. But the thing that's really important for your little ones to understand is that when the timeout is over, you need to spend a few minutes explaining and talking about the reason they were placed into the timeout. So let's say you have a 4-year-old who hit their brother or sister. We don't just have them jump up when the timer goes off or when the 4 minutes are over. You also want to have that conversation. Do you remember why I placed you in timeout? It's because you hit your brother. Okay. Remember, we don't hit people. We use our words. So you need to have that conversation with them so they can make the connection between their behavior and the reason that they earned the consequence. And then you also want to maybe have them practice redoing what they should have done the first time. So if they should have used kind words or nice words, have them practice those words with you and then maybe go and apologize to the brother or sister. So the teaching that happens after the timeout is just as important as having your child sit there for 3, 4, 5 minutes or whatever, okay? All right, so let's talk about another type of consequence for our older kids. And I don't like to necessarily call this a consequence, but I think kids need to understand that when you do or say something that hurts someone else's feeling or that damages a relationship, we need to go back and apologize. So for your older kids and little ones, we want to make sure that they learn how to apologize. So you may have to teach them what an apology looks like and sounds like, but require them to do it. There may also be times when you have to use restitution as a consequence where they make up for the behavior that they engaged in or do something to try and make up for it. So let's say you have a brother and a sister who are playing a game and one of them became angry. They threw the pieces across the room and one of the pieces actually broke. So maybe once they've earned their consequence and you've had that conversation, you may also talk about what they can do to maybe buy another one or at least fix it or make up for the fact that they broke something that belongs to someone else, okay? So those are all examples of negative consequences as well as the positive consequences. So the thing that you need to keep in mind about consequences is that the reason they can be so effective is that we want our kids to understand that your behavior has a result or an outcome. So when we use consequences, we can help our kids see the connection between the positive behaviors or the good things that they do and the positive rewards that they earn. But we also need to have them understand that when you engage in a negative behavior, guess what? There are some negative results or outcomes. So that's why we're using the consequences, so kids can see the connection between their behavior and the outcome. So again, always think, what rewards or consequences do I have at my disposal? So I gave you a list of, some categories that you can look at, privileges, attention, and things like that. So there are lots of things that you can think about that you have available in your household. Allowing kids to stay up. I think I mentioned that before. And right now there is no structured school day. The teachers may come online around 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock. They're not going to keep them all day. So maybe you want to allow your kids to stay up a little later or sleep in a little bit. They don't necessarily have to be up at 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock. Okay, maybe you can allow your kids, one of them, to choose the TV program that you're going to watch as a family later on in the evening. So those are things that I want you to think about that you have at your disposal that don't cost money. And the same thing's true for those chores that we mentioned. Folding laundry for older kids. Those are their clothes. They can partake in that activity so that you don't feel that you have to do everything. So maybe you've done the laundry, it's coming out of the dryer, they can help fold the clothes, Maybe they don't know how to get them in the drawers, the younger kids, nice and neatly, but they can at least fold them. Here's the thing, parents, it doesn't have to be perfect. If they can attempt to at least fold them, then you can fix it and make it pretty if you want to when you put it in the drawer. But for the younger kids, they may not be able to fold the clothes. But if they want to participate and they feel that they need to, participate in the same chore that their older brothers and sisters are participating in, a little one can maybe put their socks together for the laundry. They can put their underwear together, or just help in some way. But that's something that a lot of families could do, or have your kids do as a chore that they don't normally help with. Vacuuming the floor, if they know how to work the vacuum, or sweeping the floor. If this was, right now, we have a lot of time, a lot of people are organizing and reorganizing things. Maybe your older son or daughter can go out and help you rearrange or clean out the garage as a consequence. Their things are out there also, all of their sports equipment and things like that, so they can assist with those types of things. So we want chores that don't take a lot of time. We don't want chores that you necessarily have to help with, because that sometimes defeats the purpose and you have other things that you might need to attend to. So again, think of your child's age level. What are they capable of doing without having you stand there with them all the time or oversee it? We want them to be short and things that they can complete on their own. Some people have created what we call a joy jar for the things that kids like, and a job jar. So all you do is, after you generate that list together, which we want to make sure that we're asking our kids, what do you like to do? What should we put in the joy jar? What are the things that you'd like to be able to earn? And so create that list and then just write some things on a piece of paper. If you have kids that are different ages, you have a 4-year-old, a 9-year-old, a 13-year-old, you might color code them or have separate jars. But it might be easier just to put them all in one jar, but color code them so when they go pick something out of the jar, again, you know which one is for the 4-year-old, which one is for the 9-year-old, and which is for the older child. You can also use tongue depressors and write the chore on there and just pick one out of the jar. So the same thing is held true for the job jar. Make sure that you have different activities for the kids based on their ages and ability. Okay. The nice thing about doing this in advance is that you don't have to try and think, oh gosh, what can I have my child do? I'm so proud of them. Just say, okay, why don't you go pick something out of the joy jar? The same thing is when your kids do something and you're not happy with them. Sometimes we respond in the moment and it kind of defeats the purpose of using consequences effectively. If we're mad, we're yelling, we're screaming at our kids, why did you do that? Leave your brother alone. Don't do that. You're driving me crazy. We want to be calm. And if we've already determined what some of the consequences will be, we can say, you know what, the fact that the two of you are arguing over this game, you both have lost access to it. So we're going to put the game up for the rest of the afternoon. And you both need to go pick something out of the job jar. This takes it helps you remain calm. It helps the kids see that you're serious and that their behavior is serious, but it also allows you to deliver that consequence in a way that they can see the connection between their behavior and why they're having to complete this chore. Okay, so that's really important in terms of how you talk about earning or losing the privilege or access to certain things. Okay, your delivery is extremely important. Okay, so here's some things to keep in mind when you're creating that list of consequences. Make sure that you're picking things that are meaningful or important to your kids. So the things that are going to be important to your 4-year-old or your 9-year-old and your 13-year-old will obviously be different. So you have to have a variety of things that are meaningful to that child. So again, that little one probably loves hanging out with you or maybe their brothers and sisters. I have a 4-year-old grandson who has 2 older brothers. And I think he really truly believes they were created to entertain him. So for him, something that he loves to do is to do something with his big brothers, one at a time or maybe both of them. He feels they were meant to be his playmates. So putting some special things in that joy jar for when he does something really well, then that's something that I know would be really reinforcing to him. The older kids, we know they love being on the iPad. They love playing video games with their friends who are in different houses. So, those are going to be important for your older kids. So you can put extra time, playing video games with your friend who's in a different house or whatever. The other thing you want to keep in mind regarding consequences to keep them effective is to deliver them as immediately as possible. When we wait too long to let kids know that they've earned a positive or negative consequence, they will probably forget that this is why I earned it, or this is why I lost it. They forget the connection between their behavior and the outcome. So try to make sure that kids understand why they earned a positive or negative consequences as soon after the behavior as possible. Another key to using your consequences effectively is the size of the consequence. So you're going to have a variety of consequences to pick from, some smaller ones and some larger ones. So if, let's say I have another grandson who's 5 years old. He's still learning to tie his shoe. So let's say he actually achieved that. He learned to tie his shoe by himself, and he does a pretty good job. Well, we're not going to say, oh, we're going to purchase you a day at Disneyland. Can't go to Disneyland right now anyway. But Disneyland is like way too big of a reward or consequence for learning to tie your shoe. But maybe he gets to go get an ice cream cone or a Slurpee or something like that. So the size of the consequence needs to match the behavior. Another example might be that you have a brother and a sister who typically argue constantly over a game, but now they're using it appropriately. They're using appropriate voice tones. So you may give them permission to stay up a half an hour later or maybe an hour later because they're doing such a nice job of getting along. Okay, so size is really important. One of the things that we struggle with sometimes is making the rewards contingent on kids engaging in the appropriate behavior. What I mean by that is that sometimes we allow our kids to earn the consequence, or we say they can use it, but they didn't really earn it. So it goes back to this thing we call grandma's rule. Grandmas were really wise and used to, and I'm a grandmother, we usually say, if you do this, then you get to do this. Or when you get done with your homework, then you can play the game. So always make sure that you're seeing the behavior that you want first, then they get to access the good stuff, okay? And I wouldn't suggest that you have, let's say it's been a really rough day and the kids are just getting on your last nerve. I know that doesn't happen very often, right? But let's just say it's been one of those days and they're all arguing with each other and you seriously would like to go sit on top of the house if you could, just to be by yourself. And people, please don't do that. I'm just saying that as, tongue in cheek. But let's just say that it's like, oh my gosh, I can't do this. And you say, okay, everybody, you have all lost your privileges for the next 2 days. First of all, it violates the principle of size. Okay, it's way too big. But when you deliver group consequences, your kids, all of the kids may not have been engaging in that argument or disagreement at the same level. So stop and think, is this group consequence going to actually help my kids understand what to do the next time, or am I just trying to punish them? We want to stay away from trying to punish our kids, because it doesn't really teach them what to do the next time. So make sure that you use the individual consequences whenever you can, okay? So again, consequences can be very effective. All right, a couple of other things that I want you to keep in mind when it comes to consequences is you hold the key to your consequences being used effectively, okay? Be consistent. Say what you mean and mean what you say. If you tell your kids they're going to earn a consequence, do it consistently. It's really confusing for our kids when we have them earn a consequence today, then they demonstrate the same behavior tomorrow and there's no consequence. But the next day we're back to like, okay, you know what you're supposed to do. You're going to earn a timeout for that. That's very confusing. So try to be consistent in the delivery of your consequences whenever possible. Use a variety of consequences. That's why you want to have several types of consequences in your joy jar or chore jar, or just make a list. My 13-year-old grandson is not going to want to have to always pick something out of the joy jar or chore jar. He can make a list, stick it on the refrigerator, but he knows what things he has, that he might have an opportunity to do more of, or he may lose the opportunity to do. Make sure your consequences are realistic. Can you follow through on the consequence? Again, having kids lose their privileges for 2 or 3 days when you're under the same roof and you can't go anyplace, come on now. That's going to be hard for everybody. So be realistic in terms of the types of consequences that you deliver. And again, follow through. It's going to be really important that you're consistent in delivering your consequences, but that you follow through. So again, that immediacy comes into play. If you deliver the consequences as immediately as possible, then that's going to make sure that it does happen. And again, your kids are going to see you as being more fair, and they're going to realize that, okay, I cannot hit my brother or my sister and not have a consequence. Whenever I do that, there is a consequence, okay? And then we have a concept at Boys Town that we call positive correction. This is really helpful for kids to understand that all is not lost. I'm going to tell you what to do differently. I'm going to teach you the next time. I want you to use your words, and this is what it's going to sound like. So when kids practice doing the appropriate behavior or engaging in the behavior that you want them to do, allow them to earn some of that time back. So let's say they lost access to the iPad for 2 hours, but the fact that they practiced with you, they're getting along better right now with their sibling, or they're just following instructions the way that you prefer to have them do it, give them the opportunity to earn some of that time back. Never more than half. So they might earn half an hour back, or they could earn an hour back. But that lets them know that I see you trying to do better, and I appreciate the fact that you were willing to practice with me. Okay, so just to summarize, consequences follow behavior. Positive consequences increase the likelihood that your kids will change that behavior and do the same thing in the future. Negative consequences increase the likelihood that kids won't engage in that negative behavior again. Mix up your consequences. Remember, you have a lot of things at your disposal that don't cost money. Your time, your attention, privileges, things like that. You could also use food. I didn't put food in there, but like a special dessert, things like that can also, be a positive consequence. Make sure that you have a variety of consequences that you're using and it's age appropriate for your kids. You want to make sure that you're individualizing the consequences for your kids. Make sure that you try to deliver them as immediately as possible, and make sure that they are contingent upon behavior. And I just went blank. Oh, I just went blank. That they're contingent upon the behavior happening. Let me see. I just went blank on my third one. I'm sorry. Oh, appropriate in size. We don't want it to be too big or too small, okay? And make sure you're in control of you, especially when you're delivering the negative consequences. Because guess what? No one can go anyplace, so you're still going to be there with your kids. So you're also modeling for them how to handle their frustrations. But again, that's another whole lesson. Hang in there. We're going to get through this. Stay safe and stay healthy.